That particular New Year's Eve remains etched in my memory as one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. I had celebrated Christmas with my family earlier in the week, and by the time New Year's rolled around, I found myself without plans. Most of my friends had traveled or made other arrangements, so I decided to spend the evening alone at my place. The night started innocently enough. I settled into my couch with a few cold beers, flipping through channels until I found the live broadcast from Times Square. I watched the glittering ball drop, the confetti rain down on thousands of celebrating faces, and couples kissing as midnight struck. After that spectacle ended, I switched to some classic holiday films, the kind that plays on repeat every December, comforting in their familiarity. Hours passed as I sat there, occasionally getting up to grab another beer or use the bathroom, but mostly just vegetating in front of the television. The alcohol gave everything a pleasant, fuzzy warmth, and I felt content in my solitude. By the time 2 a.m. rolled around, I realized I'd been sedentary for nearly the entire day. My body felt stiff, and despite the late hour, I wasn't particularly tired. The idea of continuing to sit on that couch felt suffocating. I wandered over to my front window and pulled back the curtain. Light snowflakes drifted down from the dark sky, accumulating in a thin white blanket on the streets and lawns. The temperature outside was undoubtedly freezing, and the world looked dark and uninviting. Yet something about it called to me. A walk in the cold night air seemed like exactly what I needed to break up the monotony of my evening. I pulled on my heavy winter jacket, found my knit hat and gloves, and stepped out into the night. The cold hit my face immediately, sharp and bracing, clearing some of the fog from my beer-addled brain. What struck me most, however, was the absolute silence. I had expected to hear the remnants of New Year's parties, music thumping from houses, people laughing and talking, cars driving past with horns honking. Instead, I was greeted with an eerie calm. Every house on my street had their outdoor Christmas lights still glowing, twinkling whites, multicolored strands, illuminated reindeer and snowmen on front lawns, but no other signs of life. No cars moved through the streets. No voices carried on the wind. It was as if everyone had vanished, leaving only their decorations behind. The quietness was both peaceful and slightly unsettling, though I attributed the latter feeling to my intoxicated state making me overly contemplative. I began walking with no particular destination in mind, letting my feet carry me wherever they wanted to go. I zigzagged through my neighborhood's residential streets, admiring the decorated homes and watching my breath form clouds in the frigid air. The snow crunched softly beneath my boots, and occasionally I'd look up at the dark sky, watching new flakes drift down to join their companions on the ground. Time became difficult to track. The combination of alcohol and aimless wandering made minutes blend together. I might have been walking for 20 minutes or an hour. I genuinely couldn't tell you. Eventually, my wandering path led me to the entrance of the neighborhood park, a place I'd visited countless times during daylight hours and occasionally in the evening during warmer months. The park's walking path stretched before me, covered in snow that looked to be about 2 or 3 inches deep. The last shoveling had clearly been done that morning, before the evening's snowfall had begun. I stood at the entrance for a moment, considering whether to continue forward or turn back home. The path looked inviting despite the snow, promising a slight change of scenery from the residential streets I'd been traversing. I decided to go for it, stepping onto the trail and beginning my trek into the park. The snow was deeper than it had appeared from the entrance, more like 4 or 5 inches in some spots, making each step require a bit more effort. But I pushed forward, enjoying the challenge and the way the snow muffled all sound even further. What I hadn't anticipated, and what I noticed after walking perhaps 100 yards into the park, was that the usual trail lighting was completely absent. During spring, summer, and fall, small lampposts lined the walking path, providing enough illumination to walk safely even late at night. But apparently, for the winter season, someone had decided to turn them all off. Perhaps it was a cost-saving measure, or maybe they assumed no one would be foolish enough to use the trails in the cold and snow. The darkness was profound. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out the vague shapes of trees on either side of the path and the slightly lighter color of the snow-covered trail compared to the darker areas beyond it. But beyond that, I was essentially walking blind, trusting that the path continued straight ahead and that I wouldn't stumble over anything hidden beneath the snow. After a few more minutes of trudging through the increasingly difficult snow in near total darkness, common sense finally overrode my desire for adventure. This was stupid, I thought. I'm drunk, alone, in the dark, in the cold, and and no one knows I'm out here. If I twisted an ankle or got into some kind of trouble, I'd be in a genuinely dangerous situation. I stopped, turned around, and began retracing my steps back toward the park entrance. My boot prints from moments earlier were still clearly visible in the snow, a dark trail of compressed footprints leading back the way I'd come. I followed them, dragging my feet a bit since I was starting to feel tired now, the cold and the walk finally catching up with me. I had walked back for maybe a minute, covering perhaps a quarter of the distance I'd ventured into the park, when I noticed something that made me stop dead in my tracks. There, running parallel to my outbound footprints, was another set of tracks. Fresh tracks. Human tracks from shoes or boots. Someone had been walking right behind me. The realization sent a cold chill through my body that had nothing to do with the winter temperature. These tracks hadn't been there before. I was certain of it. I would have noticed them when I was walking in, which meant someone had followed me into the park, walking close enough behind me that I should have heard them, should have sensed their presence. But I hadn't heard anything. The snow would have crunched under their feet just as it had under mine. They should have made noise, unless they had been deliberately trying to be quiet, unless they had been purposefully following me. I stood frozen, my heart beginning to pound harder in my chest as I tried to process what I was seeing. I looked ahead toward where I turned around, trying to spot any figure in the darkness. Nothing. I looked behind me toward the park entrance. Still nothing. Then I noticed where the mysterious tracks went. Rather than continuing along the path, they veered sharply off to the left, leaving the trail entirely and heading into the dark wooded area where no light penetrated at all. The footprints simply disappeared into that blackness, which meant that whoever had been following me had deliberately left the path and was now somewhere in that darkness. They could be standing 15 feet away from me, watching me, and I wouldn't be able to see them. They could be moving closer right now, and I'd have no idea until they were right on top of me. My intoxicated brain struggled to process the danger I might be in. Part of me wanted to rationalize it away. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe someone else had decided to take a walk at the same time. Maybe they'd simply wandered off the path for some innocent reason. But another part of me, the part connected to my primal survival instincts, was screaming that something was very wrong. I didn't run, but I definitely quickened my pace, walking as fast as I could through the snow without outright sprinting. I kept glancing over my shoulder, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement or pursuit. Every shadow seemed menacing. Every distant tree could be hiding someone. My breath came faster, partially from exertion and partially from rising panic. When I finally reached the park entrance and stepped back onto the cleared sidewalk of the residential streets, I felt a wave of relief. I was out of the darkness, back under the glow of streetlights and Christmas decorations, back in civilization. I paused to catch my breath and looked back at the park entrance one more time. Nothing moved in the shadows. I didn't head directly home. Whether it was the alcohol impairing my judgment or some instinct telling me not to lead anyone straight to my door, I spent another 15 minutes or so walking through the neighborhood streets, taking a circuitous route. I saw no one else out. No cars passed me. The streets remained as eerily empty as they'd been when I first ventured out. Eventually, I made my way back to my house. The familiar sight of my front door, with its wreath still hanging from the holidays, made me feel safe again. I let myself in, immediately enveloped by the warmth of my heated home. I stripped off my winter gear, jacket, hat, gloves, leaving them in a pile by the door, too tired to hang them up properly. I decided a hot shower would be perfect before finally collapsing into bed. I headed toward the stairs, my feet heavy, my body finally feeling the exhaustion that the adrenaline from the park had temporarily masked. I placed my hand on the banister and began climbing. I was halfway up the staircase when something registered in my consciousness, something that made me stop mid-step. The upstairs was dark, completely dark. Not a single light was on. This was wrong, very wrong. I'm the kind of person who leaves lights on constantly. It's a habit that drives up my electricity bill, and I've been meaning to be better about it, but it's ingrained behavior at this point. When I wake up in the morning, I turn on lights, and I don't turn them off. I'd woken up that morning, gotten out of bed, turned on the hallway light, and left it on all day. I hadn't been upstairs since then. I'd spent the entire day downstairs watching television. There was no reason those lights should be off. None. Even in my impaired state, this fact penetrated clearly. Someone had turned off my upstairs lights. which meant someone had been in my house, might still be in my house. I stood frozen on the stairs, my hand gripping the banister, trying to decide what to do. The smart thing would be to leave immediately, go to a neighbor's house, call the police. But I also wondered if I was being paranoid. Maybe I had turned the lights off and just didn't remember? Maybe there had been a brief power outage that had flipped a breaker? These rationalizations felt weak even as I thought them, but they gave me enough courage to continue up the stairs. I moved slowly, cautiously, trying to keep my footsteps quiet even though the stairs creaked under my weight. When I reached the top landing, I stood in the darkness for a moment, my eyes adjusting, before reaching over and flipping the hallway light switch. The sudden brightness made me squint, but I could now see the entire upstairs hallway clearly. It looked completely normal. My bedroom door was closed, as was the bathroom door and the spare bedroom door. Everything appeared exactly as I'd left it. I decided to check each room just to be sure. I'd look inside quickly, confirm no one was there, then close the door and move to the next one. I started with the spare bedroom at the far end of the hall. I pushed open the door, reached in to flip on the light, and scanned the room quickly. Nothing. Just the spare bed, the dresser, some boxes of stored items. I pulled the door closed and moved to the next room. The bathroom was next. Again, I flipped on the light and looked around. Shower curtain closed. I pulled it back quickly, half expecting to find someone hiding in the tub, but it was empty. Just my bathroom as it always was. I closed that door too. My bedroom was last before the office. I opened the door, turned on the light, and checked inside. My bed was unmade from that morning. Clothes were draped over a chair. Everything was normal. I closed that door. One room left, the small office/spare room right next to the stairs. I had deliberately saved it for last because it was closest to my escape route if I needed to run back downstairs. I closed the bedroom door behind me and turned toward the office. My heart nearly stopped. The office door was wide open, standing open fully when I knew, absolutely knew, that I had just closed it moments ago. I had checked that room first, and I had definitely pulled the door closed behind me, which meant someone had opened it. Someone was in my house right now, in that room or hiding somewhere, and they had just opened that door. Terror seized me. My body flooded with adrenaline. My hands began shaking, and I felt rooted to the spot. I wanted to run, wanted to sprint down those stairs and out of the house, but I couldn't make my legs move. I stood there in the hallway, staring at that open doorway, trying to see inside, trying to detect any movement. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. "I know someone's here. I'm calling the police." No response. No sound at all except the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. I don't know where I found the courage, but I forced myself to move. I took slow, careful steps down the hallway toward that open doorway. Each step felt like it took an eternity. I tried to move quietly, tried to listen for any sound that might give away someone's position, but I could barely hear anything over my own panicked breathing. I reached the doorway. I could see part of the room from this angle, the desk, the chair, the bookshelf. Nothing seemed out of place. No one visible. I took one more step forward, positioning myself to see the rest of the room, the corners that had been hidden from view. And then nothing. Nothing is what I remember after that moment. The next thing I can recall is waking up. I came to consciousness slowly, confused and disoriented. I was lying on something hard and uncomfortable. My head was pounding with the worst pain I'd ever experienced, a throbbing agony that seemed to pulse with my heartbeat. My vision was blurry, fading in and out of focus like a camera lens trying unsuccessfully to adjust. As my awareness slowly returned, I realized I was lying on the floor, the hallway floor. I was sprawled face down on the carpet in my upstairs hallway. I tried to remember how I'd gotten there, tried to recall what had happened, but there was nothing, complete blank. One moment I'd been approaching the office doorway, and the next I was waking up on the floor with a splitting headache. I'd been attacked. Someone had hit me, knocked me unconscious, and I had no memory of it happening, no memory of seeing who it was or what they looked like. I rolled over slowly, groaning with the effort, every movement making my head throb worse. I managed to pull my phone from my pocket with trembling hands. It took me 3 tries to correctly dial 911 because my vision kept blurring and my fingers weren't cooperating properly. When the dispatcher answered, I tried to explain what had happened, though I'm not sure how coherent I was. Someone had broken into my house. I'd been attacked. I was hurt. I needed help. She kept me on the line, asking me questions, telling me officers were on their way, instructing me to try to get outside if I could safely do so. I managed to drag myself down the stairs, holding onto the railing for support, and make it to my front door. I stumbled outside into the cold night air, not even bothering to grab a jacket, and collapsed on my front porch. The cold actually helped clear my head a little, though the pain remained intense. The police arrived within minutes, though it felt much longer. They were followed shortly by an ambulance. I was examined by paramedics, who confirmed I likely had a concussion and wanted to take me to the hospital for further evaluation. Before I left, I gave the police my statement, telling them everything I could remember: the walk, the tracks in the park, coming home, checking the rooms, the open door, and then nothing until waking up on the floor. Officers searched my house thoroughly. Whoever had attacked me was long gone. They found evidence of forced entry at a back window. The lock had been jimmied open, which I hadn't noticed when I came home since I'd used the front door. Nothing appeared to be stolen. My TV, laptop, and other valuables were all still there. It seemed like the person's intent hadn't been robbery. That thought chilled me more than if things had been stolen. What had they wanted? Why follow me in the park, then break into my house and wait for me? Why attack me and knock me unconscious but not kill me or seriously harm me beyond that? What would have happened if I hadn't woken up? I spent the night in the hospital under observation for my concussion. Over the following days and weeks, I worked with the police, but the investigation went nowhere. There were no fingerprints found at the scene. The intruder must have worn gloves. No witnesses had seen anyone suspicious in the neighborhood. The snow had melted by morning, erasing any footprints that might have been around my house. The most frustrating part was my own missing memory. The doctors explained that the head trauma had caused what they called retrograde amnesia for the events immediately surrounding the injury. I might have come face to face with my attacker. I might have seen them clearly, might have recognized them if it was someone I knew. That information could have broken the case wide open, but it was locked away somewhere in my damaged brain, inaccessible despite my desperate attempts to remember. I tried everything to recover that memory. I returned to the house and retraced my steps, hoping to trigger some recollection. I looked through photos of people I knew, wondering if seeing a face might jog something loose. I even saw a therapist who specialized in trauma, hoping she might be able to help me access the blocked memory. Nothing worked. Those minutes remained stubbornly blank. The case eventually went cold. The police had nothing to go on, no leads to follow. It became just another unsolved break-in and assault, filed away in some database somewhere. They advised me to improve my home security, which I did, installing an alarm system, better locks, cameras. I also changed my habits, never walking alone at night anymore, always making sure someone knew where I was. But the fear never completely left. The question haunted me: who was it and what did they want? Was it a random attack? Someone who saw me stumbling around drunk and followed me home to rob me but got spooked and fled? Or was it something more targeted, someone who knew me, someone with a specific reason for being there? And the most terrifying question of all, are they still out there and will they come back? I've moved since then, unable to feel safe in that house anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I still wake up with my heart pounding, convinced I've heard a sound, convinced someone is there. I check all the doors and windows, turn on all the lights, and remind myself that I'm safe now. But deep down, I know that until I remember what happened in those missing minutes, until I know who attacked me and why, I'll never truly feel safe again. Somewhere in my damaged memory is the face of someone who wanted to hurt me, someone who might have wanted to kill me, and not knowing who they are is a weight I carry every single day. That New Year's Eve, which should have been nothing more than a quiet night at home, became the dividing line in my life, before and after. Before, I felt safe in my own home, in my own neighborhood. After, I know that danger can be lurking anywhere, that someone can be following you in the dark and you might never know until it's too late. I still wonder about those tracks in the park, veering off into the darkness. Was that the same person who broke into my house? Were they testing me, seeing if I'd notice, seeing how aware I was of my surroundings? Or was it someone else entirely, and the break-in was unrelated, just a terrible coincidence on an already strange night? I'll probably never know. All I have are questions, fear, and a gap in my memory where the answers should be. And the knowledge that on that New Year's night, I came far closer to something terrible than I even realized, and only by luck or chance did I wake up at all.